Okay, setup 3 of the Inav series. I have a list of stuff that a few people have asked me to do. So, first and foremost, I'm going to say about the radio mixer. So in Inav, you set up your radio like it's a regular airplane or a mini quad, whatever one. You don't set it up with the wing mixer inside the radio. So all of your mixes need to go from 0 to 100. That being said, what is it? Rates. Depending on what plane it is, it kind of varies. Let's see here. I'm on the MD Boomer, and I can show you that on the MD Boomer, my aileron in the mixer page is set to 75, 60, and 50, and same thing with my elevator. That's for high rates.
Low rates.
Low rates is 50. Mid rates is 60.
High rates.
So, actually, that's the demon. My bad. Alright, so MD Boomer.
Engine off. 0 volts. High rates. Manual mode. Off.
So rates on my MD Boomer are aileron 75, 60, 50, elevator 85, 70, 65. So and I have a little bit of expo. The main thing that I have expo on is the elevator at highest rates, just because I usually fly that when I'm going super slow, like 20, 22 miles an hour, and I need that deflection in the elevator for a little bit of authority. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is, I can turn off my radio for this for a second, is ESC calibration. So ESC calibration in Inav, especially for all you guys who have 2.4.1, there's no longer ESC calibration in the GUI. You have to go to the CLI. It is in the GUI in the outputs page, but they're doing what Baseflight used to do now, and they're going to basically 1150 and 1850. And a lot of BL 32 ESCs, that's basically what they're calibrated at, 1150 and 1850. I have no idea why this is. If someone can explain, I'd be more than happy to listen, but my old school way of thinking is the more resolution, the better it is. I think I helped somebody recently with they had an issue where they were at 50% or actually like 75% throttle, and they tried to give it more juice and it just wouldn't go. And I think this is the reason. If you have a BL Heli 32 ESC, even if you run multi-shot or one shot or just straight PWM, you're not getting the most out of your ESC. So if you have a 32-bit or not, this is how you would calibrate your ESC. This is on 2.2.1. In 2.4, like I said, they have idle throttle. So you have to go into the CLI to do some commands, like get idle and get max throttle. Make max throttle 2000, make idle throttle 4. That's the lowest that it can be, which is like 1040. So without further ado, I would want to connect. You know what? I'm in the wrong. I need to go into 2.2.1. That's why it just sent me to the CLI right there. So in here, and if you go to configuration page on 2.2.1, you'll notice that there's nothing. There's no idle, there's no anything. But I'm at D-Shot 300. But if I go to multi-shot, bam, it automatically gives me min throttle, max throttle, and min command. So you want to keep min command at 1000 the whole time anyway, but you set your max throttle to 2000 and your mid throttle, it says 1035, but there's a reason why it says 1035. You set it to 1000. So you're going 1,000 to 2,000. So you'd put 1,000 right here. You would save and reboot. And then you would go over to the motors tab. And then you would obviously click I understand. You would max throttle it, plug in your battery, listen to the chimes, drop it down to 0. Then after that, before you get out of this, you would click on this master slider thing and you would go up. You would raise it up until your motor starts spinning. And I can tell you that my motor starts spinning at like 1138. So once you find that, drop it back down, obviously undo this. Then you go back into the calibration. It's set at D-Shot 300 again. You go back into the calibration, and since it started at 1038, you would go down a couple microseconds to 1035. Then you would save and reboot it. So that is calibration on the analog side, because even a digital not servo, but a digital ESC, most of them can use PWM, and PWM's analog, so it is what it is, but you'll have that resolution. And even if you do go to D-Shot, that's why it's defaulted at 15 in 2.4.1. If you think about what 4 is 1040 microseconds. So 15, it's got to be what? 1150. So is what you would do is, let me save and reboot just because. So then after you do all this, right? So then you go into, and I got to plug in a battery for this.
Welcome to OpenTX.
Sorry, my sinuses are draining like crazy.
Off. 0 volts, high rates, manual mode, off.
All right. So then you would go into the radio tab, and you would see I'm on low throttle right now, but my low throttle is 1033. So essentially, you don't want to be above 1038. So if you wanted to get it even a little higher than that, you would go into on your Tyrannus or jumper or whatever. You would go to your outputs, and if your TAER, which throttle is channel 1, you would select it, and then you would go over. Mine's at minus 91.3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust this, right? I'm going to keep it at 91.3, but I'm going to go up like that, and I want you to watch what it does to my throttle. So you get it to as close as arming as possible, so you have hardly any resolution. I mean, you have a lot of resolution, not hardly any resolution. So that right there is essentially how you calibrate your ESC, regardless if it's a D-Shot ESC or an analog ESC. And after you do this in that analog mode, you can switch it back to D-Shot, and in 2.4.1 you do the idle throttle. So drop it to 4, and then just make sure in the CLI you put your max throttle at 2000. And you don't have to calibrate it after that because you've already done it in analog, and you do the same thing. You just raise, you lower your throttle to right under where your motor starts spinning in the motors tab. All right, so let's see what else I have in here. OSD. Okay, that's another thing too. So let me tell you something really fast on this. So on your radio, now that my plane is plugged in, so you would go. I don't know if you can see this, but let's see if you can. So if I go to my radio or my RX, and the first one is output map. You wouldn't mess with that, but you'd go to channel map, and right underneath that on mode, go do 12 channel mode, not 8 channel mode. But then go to channel map and go all the way down to the 12th channel, since you're not going to use it, except for LQ. So put LQ there, right? So after you do that, you'll notice on the Inav receiver page, as soon as you plug in, and I'll plug in real fast, you'll notice right now that 7.
Engine on.
There's
Engine
7.
off.
7 is my
A
mode
limit.
step.
Back
So
row.
let's just put that in the middle. So you'll notice that if none of your switches are on whenever you plug in, hold on. Whenever you plug in, actually, I'm sorry. Let me get out of this. And then
Sensor
go
lost.
back. Oh, really? You want to do that?
Telemetry lost.
All right, so let me. All right. I know it's being a little biatch. So, let's see. Plug in, go to receiver tab. Really, it's going to do that to me. So usually the receiver tab, this 12, usually all of it's like straight right here. But because it's being weird,
Covered.
it's not doing it. But anyway, whenever you plug that in, you'll notice that channel 12 right here goes all the way to 2000. So you know that channel 12 is in fact LQ, which is RSSI. It's actually better than RSSI. So then is what you would do is you would go up here to RSSI channel and make it channel 12, which in turn is what that does is whenever you go to your OSD, it now will show you that you have RSSI right here. I mean, obviously you got to put it there or whatever, but now your RSSI will be active, which now brings me to OSD.
Receiver is still connected.
I know the receiver's still connected. Let me power down and battery off. All right. So for me and my OSD setup, I usually put it on auto. You can just put it on NTSC if you want. But if you do that, you'll notice that it cuts off this, which, I mean, that's in fact what I'm looking at anyway. But I like to kind of see that I do have a system message, but I really don't put my system. If something happens, like return to home or something, I don't want to see it on my screen. I know that's kind of counterintuitive a little bit, but or like not auto launch, but auto trim. If you do auto trim, it stays on auto trim on the OSD the whole time. I just don't want to see that when I'm flying. So if I have a fail safe, I'll know it because of my RSSI or LQ, so to speak. So so the RSSI signal is right there. Battery voltage, I always have battery voltage, which is right up here. I have all my voltage in miles an hour right here, and then I have all my distances and satellites right here. And then just your LQ and then your throttle. So that's all I have. Now, if I was, and I know in the newer versions of Inav, you can add different layouts. I don't mess with that, but if I probably should, and I probably should put one on there in case I want to start cloud surfing or something like that, because in that case, then I would want to add the artificial horizons. That would be the artificial horizon and the horizon sidebars would be really good if you're going up and doing like mountain stuff, or if you're doing cloud surfing stuff, because you need to be able to know your orientation of your wing whenever you're flying. So yeah, I also have milliamp drawn, and that's a good thing. So milliamp drawn is right here. If I have a 5,000 amp battery, I minus 20% of that, so that equals 4,000 mAh. So basically, I know when I'm at 4,000 milliamp that I need to come home. That's just the end of that. If I have a 10,000, then you do the 20% of that, and that's when you have to come in as soon as you hit all of those milliamps that you've already flown. So also one other thing here. So as far as like altitude and stuff like that, most of the altitude settings, if you see it blinking in your OSD, it's usually set to like 33 feet for defaults. Again, I don't understand why the Inav developers set up the defaults so whack ass on Inav. And you can't tell me that it's for a wing or a quad, because a quad's not going 32 feet either, or 33 feet. And you can't tell me that your idle throttle is at 15, which is 1150. It's absolutely crazy. They need better defaults, period. They always have needed better defaults. So for altitude, I just put 4,000 feet. I mean, you can go higher. You can do whatever you want on this. Flight time in minutes, I basically, you can just go up. I don't think I have fly time on, but minimum RSSI, that's stock at 20. Distance, it basically on these little things right here, if you put it to 0, it disables it. So basically 0. Same with negative altitude, but I don't go really negative altitude. I don't use G-forces. Current amps, if you go to 0, it disables the alarm. And that's about it. So, yeah, I don't mess with any of the voltage decibels or decimals or anything like that either. I just keep it stock. So that's essentially OSD. I kind of went over rates, did the ESC idle throttle, and yeah, I think that's about it. I don't use LEDs. Trying to think if there's anything else. I don't really use black box on a wing. I used to use black box a crap ton in beta flight before race flight. That was when Josh, I forgot his name, but he started fiddling with black box. I started fiddling around with it at the same time. Yeah, it can tell you a lot, but on a wing, you have one ESC. You're not really dealing with PIDs that much, except in the stabilized mode, so you don't necessarily need it that much, in my opinion. Yeah, that's about it. If anybody has any other questions, something I did not go over, please let me know. I don't think there's anything else. Went over to the flight controller degrees and stuff like that for flying level. G-shot, all that stuff. As far as serial, your receivers and all that, I've covered that. So yeah, I think we're good. If you have any more questions, please let me know. I'll add them in. Have a good one.